and thank you for joining me for this year's AuthorTube Writing Conference. Before we get started, I wanted to give a big thanks to the AWC committee for all of their hard work in organizing this year's event, and to my moderators, Mama Maggie and Kat Leo. You're all awesome. For those of you who are new to my channel, hi! My name's Eloise, and I'm an indie author of historical fantasies. I'm currently working on a 6-book series that explores the origins of the all-female warrior tribe, the Amazons, from Greek mythology. So that being said, I'm incredibly invested in identifying what will make or break the universe that my dozen or so books are set in. With this in mind, I began looking at franchises around me to see if I could learn anything from those works that came before mine. Cue one of the most prolific and popular franchises of all time, Star Wars. With dozens of movies, shows, and books, I knew there were lessons to be learned. So I reached out to a couple of author friends that I have that I knew were as well versed in Star Wars as I am, but also working on their own sequels and spin-offs. To nobody's surprise, the whole conversation was way too long and tangential to include in today's presentation. If anyone is interested in listening to the whole thing, please let me know. I'd now like to present to you the highlights of my conversation with authors Ben Pick and J.M. Celi as we identify the elements of a successful spin-off. First, Ben and Jamie are going to introduce themselves in the pre-filmed portion of this presentation, and then we'll dive into clips from that discussion. I'm going to pop in from time to time to emphasize certain points and then summarize the 8 lessons that we've learned at the end of the presentation. Then we'll open up for discussion. So without further ado, let's go meet my guests.
Hey everybody, I'm J.M. Celi, the author of the Unlife of Lisa Cooper series and its prequel, The Vampires of 1863. I actually have a sequel coming out to the Unlife of Lisa Cooper this fall. Yeah, I've been through the exercise of writing sequels and I can appreciate those kind of milestones that you have to hit.
Ben, I know you have sequels as well.
Yeah, hi, I am Ben Pick, and I have my own series behind me. It's called Into the Void. It's an urban fantasy series involving some teenagers who gain abilities, make a lot of mistakes, accidentally get lost in time, and create a monster. Maybe not in that order.
I invited Jamie and Ben on for this talk because we all enjoy Star Wars or all have strong feelings about Star Wars, and it is a franchise that has a lot of spin-offs. And I thought it would be very interesting to examine the shows and movies that came after the first 6 films that George Lucas was in charge of. Looking at the ones that are successful, what made them successful, and the ones that were a flop and why that might have happened. For anyone who's watching who hasn't watched any or all of these or isn't a big Star Wars fan, there's probably going to be spoilers. If you don't want spoilers for certain things, don't watch this.
First question I asked to get the ball rolling in this conversation was, what was your favorite spin-off?
The first season, maybe the second season, Mandalorian, and probably Rogue One was fun. Kind of the rest of it is a wash for me. Like, most of these are passable at best, if not outright, I'm just going to say out there, insulting at worst.
I would agree Rogue One was great, but I wouldn't count it as a sequel.
Well, it's a spinoff.
It's a spin-off,
If
right?
it's a spinoff, then Rogue One's my favorite. Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2 are definitely strong second for me, but Rogue One is just so good.
Honestly, I completely agree. Rogue One as far as movies, and then as far as shows, Mandalorian, specifically season 1 and 2, season 3 can go in the trash can.
So we were all in agreement that Rogue One was our favorite movie, and of the shows, our favorite was season 1 of The Mandalorian. Let me know in the chat or leave a comment if you're watching the playback as to what your favorite and least favorite shows or movies of Star Wars is, and why. The real fun in the conversation started when I asked them what their least favorite movie or show was.
I could probably rant about a lot of different things that have spun off from the original George Lucas foundation, not foundation, but the top of that heap is episode 8. I struggle to find redeeming content. There's like a couple of scenes where I'm like, that was cool. I like that, cool. And then they completely undo the coolness, like right afterwards.
Yeah.
It's just a pile of suck. Yeah.
These 3 movies bring us to our first rule or lesson that we're learning is go in with a plan.
Yeah.
Because they clearly did not have a plan of the 3 movies. J.J. Abrams, I think, specifically said, like, oh, I made the first one and I was going to wait to start on the second one to see how the first one was received. The one that I felt most betrayed by was the Book of Boba Fett. Boba Fett upset me so much because they did him and his character so dirty by just taking him from this ruthless bounty hunter, and they could have done so much amazing stuff if they went more of like a Godfather kind of direction of he is the boss. He's ruthless. He has a code that he sticks to, like he's not going to kill children or whatever. Maybe he does. I wouldn't put it past him. No, he like becomes this good guy because he went on a trip in the desert with the sand people or something, and I was just like, why? Maybe the second lesson is your legacy characters, if you're going to change them, have their changes make sense. And then you can see the same problem in episodes 7, 8, and 9 with what they did to Luke and what they did to Han Solo.
Boba Fett was a failure as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it was one of those things where you could say that part was cool, but overall, if they they're like, okay, he's not a bounty hunter anymore. He's going to be a crime boss. Okay, he's going to do crime boss.
And if they make him into Jabba, that would have been an interesting journey.
Yeah,
but he
didn't become a crime boss. He didn't do any crime.
And then the Obi-Wan series, that was disappointing. So I guess third lesson, actually have a plot. Maybe don't just rely on having the characters that your fans know and love just kind of do nothing and have it actually be a plot. Did you guys ever see the Obi-Wan show?
I did. I agree. I felt like if they had a cohesive plot, they could have really taken all the elements they had, and it would have been, because I didn't hate the Obi-Wan plot, but I mean the series, but I agree with you. There was no firm plot. It was like, go rescue Princess Leia, and she's little.
Twice.
And then also there's Darth Vader. So there could have been a way that you could have written that in a way that you got all those bits.
Don't get me started on Sabine. She was okay in Rebels, and then she's just the new Mary Sue for Ahsoka. She's like,
because she had a character arc in Rebels.
And so
I liked her in Rebels, but I totally agree with you. Oh my God, the whole idea that anyone can learn the Force, that flies in the face of established canon. So no, if we're talking about spin-offs and sequels, you've already laid down the rules of the road, right? In which, who was it? Kanan was like, you can't just, he's training her and saying, you don't have the Force. You can't do that. You have to learn how to fight Jedi with your armor.
Well, worse than that, the show itself, like you're stating that there's contradictions across shows, but there's contradictions within Ahsoka itself, where Sabine is documented as not strong with the Force, and yet by the end of it, she's throwing Ezra 20 feet using her mind when she couldn't even move like a cup. Or she was able to get to like jiggle a little bit on the table.
Right. Like Sabine gets stabbed in the stomach with a lightsaber. And survives.
That kills every other person across the series.
What the hell happened to Qui-Gon Jinn? What? No, it just doesn't make sense. There's so many things at these different shows. They're like, oh, we don't really care the fact. Like they take the canon and throw it out the window. So when you're a spinoff to make it successful, do not take your canon and throw it out the window. It's going to piss off your fans. Right. I think which segues into tip 5. Keep your audience in mind. I think one of the big blunders that Disney is either intentionally or unintentionally doing is alienating most of their fan base. It's not inherently bad if something not naturally, but historically has a more male audience. You guys are like, ooh, romance books. Too many female audiences, not enough men like romance books. So you all need to make romance books more interesting for men. The men who want to read romance books will read romance books. The women who want to watch sci-fi movies are going to watch sci-fi movies. And they're spending all of this time and effort trying to capture this audience that doesn't necessarily give a crap about that genre anyway.
I don't mind the idea that Disney wants to grow the audience and attract other demographics, and I think that's fine.
Mara Jade.
What's that?
Building Mara Jade.
But I mean, to your point, don't take your base, your faithful, the people that have been recruiting other people over the years. Like how many Gen Xers, I'll just use an example because we were the first, we were the kids that saw it in the theaters the first time, right? Have recruited our kids. So don't betray us. We know what the canon is. We know what works in Star Wars. Keep that faithful, and then grow it.
And I guess know your audience, respect your audience, especially if you have an established audience and are making something. Don't just say, I'm going to take your beloved character and just make them awful.
I guess
Or
that's
throw them
another
out in
point.
airlock.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I guess that's another point too. Is
We were talking about this in the pre-show. Sorry.
Oh,
don't
the way
don't promise your audience one thing and then deliver another. That's not just beholden to sequels, but right? Like if you have The Mandalorian and say, here's a show about this guy, and then you tune in and you watch it, and it's really about this.
Well, that's how I felt about Boba Fett too. Is they went and like there was half of the series, half the time it was Fennec, and then the other half was Mando.
Yeah, so keep deliver what what you promised to deliver.
Yeah. I guess that ties back into the have a plan kind of
have a plan.
consideration.
Yep. And don't rush. That
Yeah,
was one of the problems with Rise of Skywalker. That's the third one, right?
I don't remember.
Whatever.
Let me put it.
In that they had specific scenes that they had built and like set pieces that they had plot things that they had to go through, and they ran out of time, so they just kind of had to run with it, and that's how you end up with a magic dagger that just shows you exactly where on the Death Star the MacGuffin is, even though it's crash landed into the ocean, and so it should be like being jostled around and being moving and whatever. Even if it is the size of a planet, then it should be torn down and
we're degrading with weather.
right. And and yet she's standing on the exact right cliff to get the exact right angle to know
the convenience. It's the hand of the author being seen or the hand of the director.
Right.
The opposite, I think, is I don't know if you guys have seen Andor. I just finished watching the second season, and that was the opposite of rushing too much. The first season came out in 2022, and the second season just released. So they, I think, really took their time with writing it. I think one of the reasons why it's so successful is because it's doing all the things that we've been talking about. It has a good plot. It focuses on character development. It's not necessarily retconning anything. I think one of the things that the critics say about it, or the complaints that some people have about it, is that there is no Jedi, there is no lightsaber duels or anything. Much more gritty, down to earth, just showing you the true, giving you, it's doing that world building too that a lot of the other spin-offs and things don't bother doing, like the Starkiller base. There's so many questions that just completely go unanswered because they're not even bothering to do any sort of world building whatsoever. They're just like, oh, this space Nazis just magically gain power and enough resources to build this new Death Star. But the Republic didn't do anything about it. For why? I don't know. Doesn't matter.
I like Andor season 2. I thought that was a good example of paying close attention to your source material, and your canon and everything like that. And like Rogue One, fits with episode 4 very, very nicely without breaking anything. It adds new elements, new characters. I thought it married up really.
Quantity. Did I say quality over quantity? Because they're very much the let's make as many shows as possible and throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, instead of saying, okay, this is the story I want to tell. I'm telling it for a reason. So just because you have the characters that maybe the fans would like something for, doesn't mean you need to do it. If there's no story there, don't do it. Because you're just going to end up pissing off your fans. Would you guys agree with that?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, I didn't, like I said before, I didn't completely hate Obi-Wan, but at the same time, I'm like, we don't need it. We know what the story is. He's hanging out on Tatooine. We don't need it.
And what's worse is that they can't do too much with it because they can't have him interacting with Darth Vader for the most part. They can't have him meeting Luke. I mean, I guess they could have him meeting Leia because that's how she knows him. Although even with like the recording, it's you fought with my father in the Clone Wars, not you saved me from being kidnapped as a child. Also, if you're doing a side story or a spin-off or whatever, we can look at Solo. And so, what do we know about Han Solo? We know he's a Corellian cadet who was set up to be an officer, left the Empire, meets Chewie in a prison, does the 12 parsec the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs, meets Lando, wins Sabak to get Falcon, and in a single movie, you don't need to throw every single thing that we know about him to give him every single backstory all at one point, winning the Falcon, and then that will be it. Like, just do one point. Don't throw all of the details that we know about a person in a single story. And also, don't do something so stupid as to give away his name, like the oh, you're here by yourself, so we're just going to call you Han Solo because you don't have a last name. Like, that is just insulting.
Just
Yeah.
more pandering. It's just all pandering. Don't pander to your fans.
I don't mind a little bit of fan service. Like they're gonna put in some little
Yeah.
Easter egg that makes you go, "Oh yes!" But it's
Yes.
exactly what Ben was saying when they ram it down your throat and say, "Didn't you ever wonder where Han Solo got his last name?" And we're like, "No, no one wonders that." It.
Also on the topic of Han Solo, how they changed him, they almost unchanged him so much. Where Luke, I mentioned how much they did Luke dirty with the changing him too much and having him go completely against what he stood for fundamentally of like loving and trusting and believing in the good of the world. Where Han Solo, you're telling me 20 years later, this guy is literally the same, did no character growth whatsoever. Oh, the change is that he's a deadbeat dad now.
They could have gone the other way with it. Like they could have made him this happy-go-lucky, super optimistic and cheerful guy who got railroaded and became the cynical smuggler that we all know today.
They could have even tied it to Kylo Ren, where he was happily married, happy go lucky, whatnot, and then turns into this new Darth Vader version 2.0, and then he's like, "Well, I failed, and so now I'm just going to go back to being a space pilot." Like, if they actually tied it to that moment, great.
So
Just learn from Star Wars' mistakes and just don't do what they did.
all three of us really like Rogue One, and it has good world building. It has good character development. They really did for Andor. I mean, you have Andor at the beginning of the series, and then by Rogue One, he's come into his full form of being a rebel leader and knowing what to do and having a plan and everything.
If you're going to bring somebody back, do it for the right reasons and don't immediately either one, kill them off, or two, blank statement, don't kill off a fan for no reason.
Yeah,
Have a reason, very good reason that's well earned.
We didn't really talk anything about the Clone Wars or the Bad Batch, the animated kind of series. We focused mostly on the live action retellings. Do you guys have any strong feelings about those shows and if they've contributed? Honestly, like once I saw Clone Wars, I'm like, okay, this is canon, this is lore. And so then all these live action shows that go against the canon that I accepted of the Clone Wars, like the World Between Worlds, that I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense because of that episode of that one time.
I did watch Bad Batch. That is an interesting case because it did start off relatively strong, start off with an interesting premise, and then just fell to the point where like I had to basically just force my wife to watch it with me because we were like, we're pot committed at this point. We have watched the first season, we might as well just keep going. And so every time I would put it on, it'd be like, oh, there's 6 more episodes, and she would just groan because it petered out. And it's worse because you could tell that it was written by a fan because they go to a very specific planet in like the 3rd season or one of the last episodes where it's this famous planet where if you read the stories, if you know what's going on, like it's an incredible Easter egg, but it has no substance to it. And it tries to make metachlorians relevant, and it tries to justify how Snoke is a clone of the Emperor who has the Force, and like there's this whole thing of the entire plot of the series is trying to find a clone who can be Force sensitive, and they might have found one in whatever her name is. And thank you. And it's interesting, but it doesn't deliver. Or when it does deliver, it keeps trying to repeat on the same plot beats that hit in the first few episodes or across the first season where it was actually good storytelling.
I hated Omega as a character.
Omega, thank you. I forgot her name.
She was an example of one of these characters that you put in, and
she's an Ewok.
She's an Ewok. To make her look cool, you have to make the other characters look bad.
Sorry, what I mean by Ewok is she's there to try to bring in younger audiences. Because the Ewoks were originally going to be the little kids. They tried to, but they toned them down into these teddy bears so they could get kids to like it and sell merchandise.
And the whole idea, I mean, she's with like, what was his name? Hunter, I think so. Like Tech and
Rambo.
all these guys, right? And these were, this is batch 99. They were like the best of the best because of their defects made them strong in certain areas. And I mean, I don't know. She's a clone of her own. I guess maybe she's got her skills and whatnot, but you don't need to make them look bad to make her look good. It's just bad writing, and they just constantly did it. But the Clone Wars, I loved. It's funny when they did, if you remember, when they basically took what would have been the first 4 episodes of the Clone Wars and served them up as a movie, right? So I saw that in the theater and I liked it, but I was walking away going, how irresponsible are they to give Anakin an apprentice? Obviously, she's gonna die. There's no mention of her in episode 3. And now you can never have Anakin meet General Grievous for the entire season or series or whatever. And I'm like, this is irresponsible, and they're gonna break canon. Mark my words. And I was mostly wrong because they found a way to handle Ahsoka, and they didn't have Anakin run into Grievous the entire time.
I liked how they took Anakin. I love Anakin in the Clone Wars. In
Yes.
like young Anakin in episodes 1 through 3, I was like, you're awful. Like, this is the Anakin that I wish I had this whole time.
You really got that French between Obi-Wan and Anakin that didn't really deliver. We got a little bit in episode 3 where the banter, where they rescue the Palpatine, right? There's a little bit of back and forth. You know, R2's doing his best. Come on,
Yeah.
Another happy landing. You know, all that kind of banter. They were at each other's throats during episode 2. You know, you didn't get the best friend vibe, but in Clone Wars, you saw how close they were, and that was really good to see. You know.
Have you guys seen there's one video that I found on YouTube that was like, what if episodes 1 through, like, it was rewriting episodes 1 through 3, but from Obi-Wan's point of view, instead of having it being focused on, it actually was really good because then it still kept that reveal of Darth Vader and being surprised and stuff like that. So maybe one of the things is also, if you're doing a sequel or spinoff, be open to the idea of having characters, a point of view character that you're not necessarily isn't your main character, or isn't the one that you would go, like Andor. Of all the lists of characters to pick from to have a show about, probably like 100th on the list, but his story is compelling and interesting, and the story is different, told from his point of view, unique, as opposed to, I don't know, Leia.
To recap the 8 lessons that we learned in examining the many offerings of the Star Wars franchise. Lesson 1. Have a plan. Even if you're hesitant to go full in and commit to writing the whole series, and you want to make that first book a potential standalone depending on how successful it's going to be, at least have a plan of where the series is going to go so you avoid just things that don't make any sense in later books. Lesson 2 is respect your legacy characters. If they're going to change over the course of the series or be a different kind of character in a spin-off, have it make sense and have it be satisfying. Speaking of legacy characters, lesson number 3 is to actually have a proper plot. Don't rely on the fans' love of a legacy character to carry the entire book. Give the book a plot, or else it's just going to disappoint your fans. Lesson number 4 is to respect your own canon. Do not retcon things. Respect your canon. If you establish rules or laws or magic systems in the first book, make sure they're consistent all the way through not only the series but the spin-offs. Otherwise, it's going to be glaringly obvious that you just don't really care about this universe that you are taking the time to build. Lesson 5 is don't alienate your audience. By the time you're writing later books in a series or writing spin-offs of a successful book or series, you already have a passionate audience that is invested in your books, invested in your characters. Do not alienate them by violating these various other lessons, such as disrespecting your legacy characters that your audience loves, or breaking canon and just confusing your audience, because it's not going to do you any favors. Lesson number 6 is don't rush it. Take your time. Focus on quality over quantity. The amount of time invested in a book, whether it's a standalone or a series, is going to show in the finished product. So you want to make sure you're telling the series for a reason, not just to try and do a quick money grab, because these things are not quick. Lesson number 7 ties into lessons 2 and 5. Don't just kill off characters for the shock value, especially those beloved legacy characters. If you are going to be killing them off, it needs to be earned and justified and satisfying. Otherwise, you are going to piss off your readers. And that's not something that we want to do. Lesson number 8 is to be open to alternate characters as the POV characters for your spin-offs. Of course, there are likely many more lessons that we can glean from the Star Wars universe, but that would take more time than is allowed. So if you keep these 8 key takeaways in mind when you're crafting your series or spin-offs, you'll be on your way to success. Before we start the live discussion portion of this presentation, I wanted to thank authors Ben Pick and J.M. Celi again for collaborating with me on this project. If you want to learn more about either of these lovely gentlemen, the links to their YouTube channels and their books are down in the description below. So be sure to subscribe to their channels for more awesome content and check out their books for a well thought out and satisfying read. If you're here live, I'm going to pop into the chat now and respond to any questions that you've dropped or highlight any topics or points that you guys have added to the discussion. So let's go.
Hi, everybody. Hopefully this transition, oh, there we go. Am I on? Nope. Am I? Can you see me? Can you hear me? What is happening? Hi! There's gonna be a mess up at some point, because if not, it wouldn't be my channel. Thank you for watching my pre-film portion. So if you have any thoughts, comments, questions about my 8 lessons that I identified with Ben and Jamie, let me know in the comments. I'm going to kind of read them behind the camera. One of the things that Ben mentioned, he had all sorts of hot takes that unfortunately I had to cut from the for this video to keep it in our time period. But one of them that he just put in the chat was whether what makes something a spin-off versus just part of a series. And that was something that interests me, and I'm not sure. I feel like a spin-off is related to the characters or in the universe, but isn't part of that overarching plot device. Let's see. Make sure. Yay! Yeah. Please like the live stream, subscribe. My awesome mods, Mama Maggie and Kat, have been posting links to newsletters, YouTube channels, author websites, books. Release the tapes next week. I don't want to take attention away from the conference, which is so exciting. And I'm very honored to be here. Yeah, so we got Ben's channel. Where's Jamie's? It's coming. Does anybody have questions or have a opinion about a show that maybe we talked some smack about that you disagree with? I didn't get to mention that the Han Solo movie was the worst box office wise spinoff. I think it grossed only $300 million, which is a lot of money, but compared to the billions of dollars that all of the other Star Wars shows and movies have grossed, it is abysmal. And I think we can all see why. But are you one of the rare people who actually like the Han Solo movie? Let me know. Let's see. Question from Margaret. Do you envision a spin-off for your Maiden of Artemis series? Yes-ish. So my 6-book series follows Otrera in her coming into her own as the first queen of the Amazons. So it's 6 books because I feel like if you do it too fast, it's not as satisfying. And she's going from a slave to a badass queen, and so we need to have some development there. But there are other characters that I was thinking of having sequels / spin-offs for. I'm not sure if those would be full-length novels or if potentially an anthology of sorts. I am currently working on a prequel that is an actual myth retelling. So it's what makes a spinoff, what makes a prequel, what makes a sequel. I'm not sure. I don't think I'm the boss of defining what that is, but I do have a plan. Well, at least I have a plan for the series. I thankfully have a soft magic system, so that can be very loosey-goosey, and I'm not going to end up in a situation like with a lot of the Star Wars things with like the Force, where they had previously established that you could only use the Force if you had a high midichlorian count. Which, can we raise our hands if we ever, when we were kids, got confused with the mitochondria? That confused me a bunch as a kid. I thought midichlorians were real for a long time when I started learning about mitochondria. But yes, I still have it all planned because I'm a planner. And Alexa is right. I always have a plan. Whether I follow the plan, much like this live stream, is up for debate. So, wait, where did Jamie's channel? There's JM Celi's channel. Go follow him too. He is going to be having a presentation tomorrow, I believe. And I don't know if Ben, are you presenting for the AWC? Oh, Alexa's reading some of it. It's spicy. The powerhouse of the cell. Oh gosh. Okay. Yes, this is it. Yep, Ben is doing other fun things this weekend, but he made time to come into the chat and join me today, so I appreciate that. Let's see. Favorite and least favorite character of Star Wars and why? This part is going a lot slower than I thought it would. I think I have an hour. Ooh, Margaret coming in with the questions. You're awesome. Let's see. How do you balance having the plan but not spilling the secrets ahead of time? You have trusted people who aren't on the internet, like your partner, your sibling, your parent. My dad has heard all of my things and just forgets it, and then I get to tell him again, and it's great. And I have friends like that too. So my poor friends and my poor parents and my poor husband. But that way I can get it out of my system and be excited about it without like telling the internet. And I'm also just really bad at marketing myself. Marketing is awful. Seriously, yeah. I was telling him about this prequel one, and it's spicy, so he was like getting confused, and I'm summarizing what happens, and he was trying to guess. It gets awkward fast when you try to tell your supportive parent or parent-in-law about your spicy books. I don't know how people do it. Okay, cool. Question. Mama Maggie asks, are there scenes in sequels that you are excited to get to? Yes, there's a lot of scenes that I really want to write and would love to jump ahead to them. But I think one of the ways that motivates me to get through the crappy stuff that I don't really want to write is to save that for later and kind of think on it. I don't know if that's just me or if other people write out of order. I usually have to write chronologically, especially to make sure that things with the number of different characters and where everything is, I'll just get confused. Richard, I'm not sharing that comment on my screen. Naughty. That's for a different stream. This is the AWC. Okay, we keep that clean. This is true. This is true. But this is a romantasy, and it's very intertwined, if you will. So it's relevant. At least it's relevant, right? It's not just spice for spice's sake. Let's see. Thank you. I'm glad everyone else is saying Is Richard the only? Did Ben leave? Is Richard the only boy in here? Man, the only man. Let's see. Alexa asks, how do you keep track of what to put in sequels, prequels? I think this ties into one of the points. I can now no longer remember what number it is, but plot, having a plot as opposed to characters. So there are characters that I think it would be interesting to explore their either backstory, or maybe there are characters that will be coming up due to events in the series, without giving things away. But I don't want to just write it because of that character. So before I actually decide what I'm putting, or like whether the sequel is happening, I need that plot first. I need a theme that I want to explore, and things like that. But how do I keep track of what I put in sequels or prequels? Spreadsheet. You know how I love them spreadsheets. So good. I also use Milanote, but I haven't usually used that lately because I also have a mental filing cabinet that I mostly forget. Richard, you're right. I'm not denying it, but I'm also not putting that on the screen. You can also subscribe to my newsletter. I send it out once a month, if I remember, because I'm bad at marketing. Let's see. The mighty spreadsheet. Yes, indeed. Spreadsheets are awesome for keeping track of things, especially like series. Does anybody else have questions, comments, concerns, other than Richard making a comment about spreadsheets? That's the only comments I will be taking from Richard at this time. Should I do a presentation on spreadsheets next year? I feel like my bookkeeping presentation was kind of a flop last year, but then that had a... Ooh. Mama Maggie asks, besides Star Wars and Star Trek, what is another series that you felt needed to be better written? There's a spinoff of or a sequel of the series which shall not be named that I was incredibly disappointed by and thought was it's a great example of violating your own canon. But I also think that one of the problems with that is the author being different. I think it was a different person that was just like, okay, I'm gonna write this screenplay, and then the awful person said, yeah, okay, because I want money. So I think the too many cooks in a kitchen thing. Margaret asks, what about dialogue for loosely historical works? What passes the test to be used from modern language? That's a really great question because I am not good at that. For the most part, there's that balance, especially with the historical stuff, of speaking, well, so you have the historical things, like Margaret writes historical fiction. I think the most recent one that she's published is in Scotland, back in ye old times, where they have actual written things, and you can kind of what am I trying to say? More than just epic poems to reference to. There's letters to each other and things like that, so you can get a better idea of how people spoke. So for me, with my ancient historical fantasy, this takes place before the Trojan War. So Homer actually, he is singing about events that took place hundreds of years before he lived. So the way he spoke isn't even necessarily the way the people in Troy and all that stuff spoke. And then my stuff takes place before that. So it's like a balance of, I don't want it to be too formal. The gods speak more formally, but also it's in ancient Greek, and then I'm translating in English. So just kind of natural, but also avoiding the colloquialisms, deer in the headlights. Oh, I can't think of all the other things right now, but making sure you're avoiding those modern things and maybe not having really specific modern slang, but there's modern curse words that I don't see why they wouldn't have said those kinds of curse words back then. It's not like it's a different word, but it's the same intention behind it. I think it's very subjective, and then editors help with that. But I think once you figure it out on your subjective, what you think is formal enough or historical enough feeling or the vibe that you want, be consistent with it. Because that's, I think, what throws people off a lot, is if you go from having the characters speaking in more of a casual way, and then I had this problem actually in the first draft of Maiden of Artemis, where Artemis spoke more formally, and my scenes with Otrera, when she's speaking to Artemis, Otrera's dialogue was kind of matching her formality. And then when I went back and revised it, I'm like, Otrera's a slave. She's not going to be this eloquent. She's just not. So figuring out how you want all of your characters to talk, and then just being consistent with it. Hopefully that answered that question. I was hoping you'd speak on bookkeeping again, actually, because I have one brain cell. I don't know if my oh hey, I have one of these. Maybe I'll finish working on it and share it as a freebie or something. Okay, wait, I was talking for a long time, sorry guys. Primary sources, yeah, that's what I meant. Rachel asks, do you feel spin-offs need to incorporate the original characters or cameos of them, or can they be successful within the same world without touching the characters from previous works? So tying this back into Star Wars that we were discussing earlier in the presentation, Andor was a very successful spinoff, very popular, well received by both critics and fans. I think it's one of the best storytelling series that they have, and there are a couple of minor characters that are original characters that are part of the Empire. I can't remember their names, but basically the guy who's in charge of building the Death Star is one of them off the top of my head. But everyone else is newer or original, and there isn't the big heavy hitters like you have in episodes 7, 8, and 9, where you have Leia and Han and Luke. And as a fan, I was excited to see them, but then I was disappointed with how they were treated and how their role in it. So I think if you are going to incorporate those legacy characters, make sure that it's satisfying for a reader. Maybe have a reader who's a fan be a beta reader and see if they're satisfied with the representation and how the characters that they love and adore appear in those spin-offs or cameos. In my prequel, there is one of the characters that's in Maiden of Artemis, and he's a little different because it takes place quite a bit earlier than what the series is. So he's, I'm taking that into consideration with the characters. He's not going to be the exact same person in the two different works, but there's going to be enough in common, and I will lay the groundwork of making it make sense why he goes from this Rottweiler of a guy to just kind of a more reserved, less optimistic, I guess. I don't know how to describe this without giving too much away. But I think the spin-offs, to be more specific, I do think spin-offs can and have been successful with without the original characters. And if anything, the original characters, if you don't do those cameos right, if it's just a little cameo, I think it's cool to help ground the rest of your story and have where that is. Like the Game of Thrones, what is it, House of the Dragon? It's set way in the past, and so you have this, you're familiar with the world building, and you understand how those characters relate to the characters that you already know. So I think if you're going to introduce new characters, give us a reason to be invested in those new characters, as opposed to just like, oh yeah, they're this guy's kid or something. I don't think just having them be in there will automatically make that spinoff a success. Oh, Maggie says, why did you choose AU Greek mythology for your series? FYI, you inspired my Greek myth, AU. I have been wildly obsessed with Greek mythology since middle school when we did the unit on ancient Greece, and we each had to dress up in togas and stuff. In 6th grade, I don't have pictures of that, thank goodness. But so I've just been fascinated, and it's just so much fun to have that. Yep, that's my hyperfixation, and that's what you're stuck with from me. Let's see. I should have gotten some degree in that because of how much I love it, but I wanted stability and money, so I went with accounting. I don't know if it's a good call or not. Let's see. Okay, we've got about 15 more minutes, and imagining Ashura is eloquent. Exactly. She's oh, how Mama Maggie asks, how long did the research for Legend of the Amazon series take? So since I've been obsessed with Greek mythology since I was, how old was I? 11. I've kind of been researching for a long time, just familiarizing myself with the myths and everything like that. I think I didn't necessarily sit down to research society or anything like that. I came across Otrura as a name in a myth after I was asking myself, where did the Amazons come from? And couldn't find any origin story that I really liked. So in that search for where the Amazons came from, I found Otrura, and all it said was Otrura is the first queen of the Amazons. And so I kind of did some exploration of that based off of where she falls in line with other myths, with other heroes. I figured out a timeline of what when this would be taking place, as far as like whether it was during when Odysseus was alive or earlier than that. So this Legend of the Amazons takes place prior to Theseus even being born and prior to the Minotaur and stuff. And it actually, the book one actually opens with King Aegeus, who is the first king of Athens. He's getting ready to invade Athens. It's a long story. Anyway, from that, I went and researched those historical events that were better documented, I guess, to kind of figure out, okay, what's the level of technology that I'm working with here? But unfortunately, it's kind of at the beginning of the Greek Dark Ages. So I, researched what I could from 600 AD, or no, 600 BC, but my story takes place like 400 or 500 years prior to all the historical documentation and antiquity. God, what's the word that I'm looking for? Anthropology, archaeology, that kind of stuff. The pottery, all those kind of historical things. My stuff takes place like 400 years before. So I researched for maybe a week or so what I could, and then I'm going off of that, but then also like, okay, a lot can change in 400 years. So, I'm just going to assume that they have wheels and clothes and oil lamps and stuff. We're just going to go in with it. Just pretend like you know what you're talking about. That's my recommendation. Oh, yeah, I have just researched for just only 10 years. what do I think about the multiple versions of many of the Greek myth stories? I love it. I love all the different interpretations of things. It's a lot like fairy tale retellings, but like older and more original, not original, whatever, you know what I mean. It's along the same line as the fairy tale retellings. I think if it's a refreshing take on it, it's super cool. Exploring the different lessons that could be learned. I always think it's interesting that the myths could be used to have either explained why something exists in our world, like Persephone and Hades, and why there's winter, you know, answering these questions that people may have had at that time that they didn't have science to necessarily give an answer, or, you know, why people, and I think that's with a lot of mythology, is like just trying to answer questions that they didn't have answers for at the time, like why people just will suddenly die in the middle of the night. There's African mythological creatures that if you sleep on the ground, this, you know, creature would come and take your soul. And I think that was their way of explaining why, like carbon monoxide poisoning and stuff, or carbon dioxide. I can't remember. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm an accountant and a author. So I think it's cool. Sometimes I get tired of the same myths being reused again and again because there are so many myths out there, but it's easier to latch onto one of those well-known ones to be able to market yourself. So it makes sense that people choose to do that. Let's see, I think we're getting towards the end of the stream. Mama Maggie coming in with all the good questions. What do you think has spawned renewed interest in Greek mythology and all the retellings? Honestly, I don't. I think that we're not being renewed. I think that genre is on a downward slope at the moment. It was renewed recently because Song of Achilles popped off on TikTok, and then everybody and their brother jumped on that kind of bandwagon. And I think there's also a distinction between Greek myth retellings that are modernized and then those ancient, you know, settings. And also the feminine rage. There's been a lot of retellings of the female character's point of view. You know, let's talk about Clytemnestra and Hera, and what are some other ones? Medusa. There's all sorts of female characters that were either just minor characters in these myths, or even Circe with Madeline Miller, again, that are just mentioned in passing, or they're villains, and they don't have a lot of agency, and we know that they are people with agency, and what did things look like from their end. So retelling that, and then also Epic the musical has definitely added fuel to the fire for me. I recently read the indie author's debut novel Elysium. I think her name's L.B. Brooks, and that was excellent. It was, you know, almost fan fiction. That's one of the things that is the question is, are these Greek myth retellings just fan fiction? You know, because to a certain extent, I think they are, because I am a fan. But yes, we should do a live stream sometime and just talk, and get Emma Bennett in here too, because she also, I think, has a degree in classics. So hi JD, and hi Leon. All right. Ooh, yes, I need to read that too. Yes, exactly. And it's really interesting to see that there are some people who are very grumpy about how much leeway some people take with these characters and with the original stories. But I think for the most part, it's just like, yay, Greek mythology, give me more. You know, it's like being a fan of chocolate. I'm not gonna be mad that these desserts have chocolate in them. Just give me more chocolate. Let's see. Ooh, happy hour is starting at the top of the hour. Okay, so I will wrap up so everybody can have a little break before they get over to happy hour. Before I go, I wanted to remind everyone to please fill out that feedback form so you can be entered to win. And sorry. I'm terrible at this. But fill out that feedback form to be entered to win some amazing prizes. The link to that will be in the description and or the chat. If you are have any other questions or comments, or if you're watching the playback of this, feel free to leave a comment down below, and I'll be happy to chat more about spin-offs, sequels, Star Wars, Greek mythology, anything like that. But thank you all for coming to my presentation and joining me in this AuthorTube Writing Conference 2025. Thanks again to Mama Maggie and Kat for being my moderators. You guys are awesome. And final thanks to Ben and Jamie for collaborating with me on this. It's been so much fun, and I can't wait to do it again. So until next time, take care. Bye.